Right now, the USS Gerald R. Ford is cutting through the Pacific Ocean with 4,539 people living aboard. That's more people than most American towns. They're 200 miles from any land, surrounded by nothing but water in every direction. These aren't passengers on vacation. They're working around the clock in one of the most dangerous jobs on Earth. They eat 18,000 meals every day. They sleep in rooms smaller than prison cells. And they operate the most powerful weapons ever put to sea. How do 5,000 people survive for months in the middle of the ocean? The reality is more incredible than you think. The USS Gerald R. Ford isn't just a ship. It's a floating city with a population bigger than thousands of American towns. At this very moment, 4,539 sailors, Marines, and airmen are living their entire lives aboard this nuclear-powered aircraft carrier somewhere in the vast Pacific Ocean. But the Ford isn't alone. America operates 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, each one home to roughly 5,000 people. The Nimitz-class carriers have been the backbone of American naval power for decades. Ships like the USS Abraham Lincoln, USS George Washington, and USS Ronald Reagan. Each one carries entire communities across the world's oceans. These floating cities represent American engineering at its finest. Each carrier costs over $13 billion and takes nearly a decade to build. The result is a vessel that can operate independently for months, supporting 5,000 people in the middle of hostile waters thousands of miles from home. If you're proud of American naval power like this, type proud in the comments. The numbers are staggering when you really think about them. The Gerald R. Ford stretches 1,092 feet long, longer than the Empire State Building is tall. It displaces over 100,000 tons when fully loaded. But here's the mind-blowing part. It can cruise for 90 straight days without touching land or resupplying. 90 days with 5,000 people in the middle of the ocean. So, how do you feed 5,000 hungry sailors and Marines every single day? The logistics involved are absolutely incredible. The ship's galleys operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They serve over 18,000 meals daily. That's not a mistake, 18,000 individual meals. Think about that for a second. Your local McDonald's might serve a few hundred customers on a busy day. These floating cities are preparing fresh, hot meals for thousands of people every few hours, while bouncing around in ocean swells, sometimes in the middle of combat operations. The food storage alone is mind-boggling. Aircraft carriers stock enough provisions to feed a small city for months at a time. We're talking about thousands of tons of frozen meat, fresh vegetables, dairy products, and dry goods. The ship has multiple refrigerated storage areas, each one the size of a warehouse. But here's what most civilians don't realize. The food aboard these carriers is actually outstanding. Navy culinary specialists train at some of the best culinary schools in the country. They compete in cooking competitions. Some meals served on these floating cities would put high-end restaurants to shame. Fresh bread gets baked every single day in massive ovens that never stop running. Pizza night, Taco Tuesday, steak and lobster dinners, the variety is incredible. These aren't military rations we're talking about. These are fresh, made-to-order meals prepared by skilled chefs who happen to wear Navy uniforms. The galley operations are like watching a perfectly choreographed dance. During mealtimes, you'll see lines of sailors moving through serving areas that can feed hundreds of people in minutes. Steam tables stretch for what seems like forever, loaded with every kind of food you can imagine. And it all happens while the ship is moving, while aircraft are taking off and landing overhead, while the entire vessel might be rolling in heavy seas or maneuvering at high speed. The precision required is absolutely incredible, but feeding 5,000 people is just the beginning. Where do all these people sleep? How do you house the population of a small town in a space smaller than most shopping malls? The answer lies in engineering efficiency that would amaze most people. Sailors sleep in what they call racks beds, stacked 3 high-end compartments throughout the ship. Each sailor gets a space about the size of a coffin, but it's theirs. These aren't just mattresses thrown in a room. Each rack has its own light, ventilation system, and storage space. Sailors customize their tiny spaces with photos, personal items, and whatever comforts they can fit. It becomes home for months at a time. Privacy is limited, but the crew makes it work. Senior enlisted sailors might share a room with just one other person. Junior sailors often bunk with dozens of others in larger compartments. But everyone respects the unwritten rules that make close living possible. The officers get slightly better accommodations, private staterooms that are still smaller than most college dorm rooms. Even the captain's quarters, while more spacious, would seem cramped by civilian standards. Space is at a premium when you're supporting 5,000 people on a moving platform in the ocean. Here's a quick favor before we continue. Hit that subscribe button. Most viewers watch without subscribing, but it really helps us create more content about America's incredible military. Now, let's talk about the work these 5,000 people actually do. Aircraft carriers don't take breaks. They operate 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There are no weekends, no holidays, no downtime. Someone is always working, always watching, always ready. The flight deck operations alone require hundreds of people working in perfect coordination. When you see those videos of jets taking off from carrier decks, you're watching one of the most dangerous workplaces on Earth. Aircraft weighing tens of thousands of pounds, moving at incredible speeds with jet engines that can suck a person in or blow them overboard. The deck crew, they call them rainbow shirts. Because of their different colored jerseys, each have specific jobs. Yellow shirts direct aircraft movement. Blue shirts handle chocks and chains. Red shirts deal with weapons. Purple shirts fuel the aircraft. Green shirts maintain catapults and arresting gear. These are mostly young Americans, many just out of high school, handling equipment worth more than most people will earn in their entire lives. F divided by A18, Super Hornets cost about $70 million each. One mistake, one moment of inattention, can result in catastrophic damage or loss of life. But they do it with skill and precision that would blow your mind. During intensive flight operations, aircraft launch and recover every few minutes. The coordination required is like nothing else on Earth. Air traffic control, catapult operations, arresting gear, fuel systems, weapons handling, dozens of different specialties, all working together flawlessly. Below deck, the ship's engineering spaces are even more impressive. The nuclear reactors that power these floating cities are marvels of American technology. 2 A-4W reactors on the Nimitz-class carriers generate enough power to supply a city of 100,000 people. The reactor compartments are staffed by some of the Navy's most highly trained personnel. Nuclear-trained sailors go through nearly 2 years of intensive schooling before they're allowed to work on reactor systems. The standards are incredibly high because the margin for error is zero. These reactors can run for over 20 years without refueling. They create not just propulsion power, but all the electricity needed to run a floating city. Lights, computers, radar systems, weapons, life support, food preparation, water production, everything depends on those nuclear power plants deep in the ship's hull. Water production is another marvel of engineering. Aircraft carriers make their own fresh water from seawater using nuclear-powered desalination plants. The Gerald R. Ford can produce over 400,000 gallons of fresh drinking water every single day. That's enough water for 5,000 people to drink, cook, shower, do laundry, and operate all the ship's systems. The water produced is actually cleaner and purer than what most Americans drink at home. It's filtered, treated, and tested continuously to ensure safety. Waste management on a floating city with 5,000 people is a massive undertaking. Everything has to be processed aboard the ship. Food waste gets ground up and disposed of safely in the ocean. Human waste goes through sophisticated sewage treatment plants built right into the vessel. Garbage gets sorted, compacted, shredded, or burned in shipboard incinerators. Nothing goes over the side unless it's been properly processed. These ships have to be completely self-sufficient for months at a time. Medical care for 5,000 people in the middle of the ocean requires a full hospital facility. Aircraft carriers have medical departments with dozens of doctors, nurses, and corpsmen. They can handle everything from routine sick call to major surgery. The medical spaces include operating rooms, X-ray equipment, dental facilities, a pharmacy, and even intensive care units. They're prepared for combat casualties, but they also handle the everyday medical needs of 5,000 people living in close quarters. Emergency medical evacuations can happen by helicopter when the ship is close enough to land. But when carriers are operating in the middle of the Pacific or Atlantic, the medical team has to be ready for anything. They've performed everything from appendectomies to heart surgery while the ship is underway. Communication with the outside world is crucial when you have 5,000 people separated from their families for months at a time. Modern aircraft carriers have sophisticated satellite communication systems that allow email, internet access, and even video calls home. This is a huge improvement from just a few decades ago. Sailors in the 1,970 seconds and 80 seconds might get one brief phone call during an entire deployment. Now, crew members can stay in touch with family, watch movies, and even take online college courses while deployed. The morale impact is enormous. When you're stuck on a ship with 5,000 other people for months, being able to connect with the outside world makes a huge difference in mental health and job performance. But what happens when these floating cities encounter bad weather? The ocean can be incredibly hostile, with storms that would send smaller vessels running for port. Aircraft carriers are built to handle the worst Mother Nature can throw at them. These ships can operate in seas with waves over 30 feet high. The hull design and the ship's massive weight keep it stable even in conditions that would be terrifying to civilian mariners. Flight operations might be suspended in extreme weather, but the ship keeps going. Hurricane-force winds, massive waves, driving rain aircraft carriers push through conditions that would shut down entire ports. The 5,000 people aboard just keep working, keep eating, keep sleeping as if they were tied up to a dock somewhere. The navigation and seamanship required to operate these floating cities safely is incredible. The bridge team works around the clock, monitoring weather, other ship traffic, and potential threats. They're responsible for safely moving 100,000 tons of ship and 5,000 human beings across the world's oceans. Maintenance on an aircraft carrier never stops. With 5,000 people depending on every system working perfectly, preventive maintenance is critical. Teams of specialists work continuously on engines, electrical systems, weapons, life support, and hundreds of other critical components. The precision required is amazing. These aren't cars that you can pull over to the side of the road if something breaks. When you're 500 miles from land with 5,000 people aboard, everything has to work all the time. Training continues even during deployment. New sailors learn their jobs from experienced crew members. Emergency drills happen regularly. Fire drills, damage control exercises, general quarters drills where the entire ship's company responds to simulated emergencies. These drills aren't optional. In combat or emergency situations, the lives of all 5,000 people aboard depend on everyone knowing exactly what to do. The training is intensive, realistic, and never-ending. The social dynamics of 5,000 people living together in a confined space are fascinating. These floating cities develop their own cultures, traditions, and ways of dealing with the stress of deployment life. Religious services happen regularly, with chaplains representing multiple faiths. The ship's library provides books, movies, and quiet spaces for people who need to get away from the crowds. Fitness facilities help crew members stay in shape and burn off stress. Entertainment comes in many forms: movie nights, talent shows, sports competitions between different departments. During Steel Beach picnics, when the ship is in calm seas, crew members can actually barbecue and relax on the flight deck, surrounded by nothing but ocean. The diversity aboard these floating cities is remarkable. Crew members come from every state, every background, every walk of life. Small-town kids from Kansas work alongside people from major cities. College graduates serve with high school dropouts who found their calling in the Navy. What unites them all is the shared experience of living and working in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. The bonds formed during these deployments often last a lifetime. Career advancement happens even while deployed. Sailors take advancement exams, complete training requirements, and compete for promotions. The Navy's commitment to professional development doesn't stop just because you're 1,000 miles from land. Leadership development is continuous. Young sailors quickly learn to supervise others, manage complex systems, and make critical decisions. The responsibility given to 2 0-year-olds on aircraft carriers would amaze most civilian employers. The technology aboard these floating cities continues to evolve. The newest carrier, USS Gerald R. Ford, uses electromagnetic catapults instead of steam to launch aircraft. Advanced radar systems can track hundreds of contacts simultaneously. Computer networks connect every department and workstation. But the human element remains the most important factor. These floating cities succeed because of the dedication, skill, and teamwork of 5,000 Americans working together toward common goals. The economic impact of operating these floating cities is enormous. Each deployment involves not just the 5,000 people aboard, but thousands of family members back home. Supply ships, port services, and countless contractors support every aspect of carrier operations. The strategic value is immeasurable. These floating cities can project American power anywhere in the world. They provide air support, humanitarian assistance, and show the flag in regions where land-based alternatives don't exist. Environmental considerations are increasingly important. Newer carriers are more fuel efficient and produce fewer emissions. Waste management systems are constantly improved. The Navy takes seriously its responsibility to protect the oceans that serve as highways for these floating cities. The future of aircraft carriers looks toward even more advanced technology. But the fundamental mission remains the same: projecting American power and protecting American interests around the world with floating cities crewed by the finest sailors, Marines, and airmen our nation can produce. The men and women serving aboard these vessels are living extraordinary lives in extraordinary circumstances. They're proving every day that Americans can thrive anywhere, do anything, and overcome any challenge when we work together. Every meal served, every aircraft launched, every system maintained represents the best of American ingenuity, determination, and teamwork. These aren't just ships, they're floating proof of what our nation can accomplish. The next time you see news about aircraft carriers, remember the 5,000 Americans calling the ocean home. They're living and working in conditions most of us can barely imagine, doing jobs that keep our nation safe and free. These floating cities represent the pinnacle of American naval power and the dedication of the sailors who make them work. They deserve our respect, our support, and our gratitude for their service to our great nation. If this incredible story of American naval power impressed you, hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing content about the people who keep our country strong. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.